Welcome back to another episode of Paper Mache People. I'm your host, Yilin. In today's show, my co-host Misha and I are taking a walk down history to explore the journey of one group of migrants, Chinese people moving to Southeast Asia in the 18 and 1900s. Ourselves both being descendants of this community, this story lies very close to our hearts. And given the overwhelmingly positive reception of the hit movie Dear You, we imagine that this is probably true for some of our listeners as well. Neither of us are professionals in history, in fact, very far from it. And we have done research for this episode purely out of our own curiosity. But what we're trying to do is to give a very high-level narrative of our ancestors' journey. And while we might get some things wrong, we ultimately hope that this content can act as a starting point for our listeners who are curious about this topic and that you feel encouraged to research and learn more on your own. In any case, we hope you enjoy it. Hey Misha, how is it back in Switzerland?
It's been so hot. I am so happy that I visited you in Sweden during the peak heat wave moment. And I got back on the last day of the heat wave and it was 38 degrees.
Oof.
And without ceiling fans in the apartment, I was really non-functional for that whole day.
Oof. Yeah, I've seen like people posting on Instagram just a couple of weeks back, like it was not Switzerland, but it was France, where people were like panic buying fans and air conditioners.
Yeah.
Looks tough.
It is.
This is like one of the only time of the years where I feel like Sweden is like the best place
Yes,
to be.
definitely. The weather in Sweden was so nice. I found it super funny that Marcus's friends were texting each other saying, oh my God, 22 degrees is way too hot. I cannot deal with this heat. And my mind is like, if only
Right.
you were in Zurich.
I think they were saying like, oh, it's way too hot for a midsummer day.
Yeah, and they were kind of like, they looked like they were sweating, right?
Yeah.
And then I was still in my cardigan and it was quite windy.
Okay lah, to be fair, in the house, it did get quite warm at some point in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But what did you enjoy this time? Because it was your first time to Sweden.
Yeah,
right?
I was really pleasantly surprised about Sweden. I didn't know much about it and its history and what to expect going there. Stockholm, I think, is one of my new favorite places in Europe.
Ooh.
So we were visiting it with Li Fang, who has been on the show. And both of us, every time we experience something nice, we're like, oh my God, Eileen is so lucky. She's going to be moving to Stockholm. And then at some point, at the beginning, it was more like, oh my God, so nice for Eileen. And then at some point, we were like, oh my God, what are we doing with our lives? Why are we not here? The food was so good. A lot of good Asian food. And probably one of the best Asian food I've had in the recent years in Europe.
Wow.
I don't know what's up with this trip, but Li Fang and I were both going crazy over the food.
Okay, that's something that I'm looking forward to. So that being said, today's episode actually has nothing to do with Sweden or midsummer. Today we're talking about the Chinese diaspora to Southeast Asia. We wanted to record this a couple of weeks ago, but then we had a little of a summer break. So Misha, do you know the movie Dear You that's been a big hit in Malaysia and Singapore recently?
Yeah, only because you told me about it. I haven't watched it though, so I would like to watch it if it ever comes to Europe.
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't watched it either. My whole family has watched it. Even my sister in Australia has watched it because it's screening there, but none in Europe, unfortunately. For people who are not familiar with this movie, Dear You is a film that came out, I believe, June 2026, and it's called 给阿妈的情书 in Mandarin. It's a story set in modern day China about a grandmother who lives in Shantou, an area from which many immigrants originate from. And her husband had fled to Southeast Asia to avoid conscription during a civil war. And they maintained correspondence via something called a qiaopi. Remittance letters include contain some money. And this was coincidentally so related to the topics that I wanted to talk about. And yeah, I actually want to probe into questions like, why did our ancestors even go to Malaysia? How did they do it? Around which time did this become a trend? What did they do when they arrived in the Southeast Asia? And what support systems did they have? Yeah, are these things that you've thought about? Like you've reflected about or spoke to your family about? Misha?
I think we did learn a little bit in school.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about it more once I left home and kind of wondering, actually,
Right.
to have a conversation with my grandparents about how it was like for them. How did they experience it? Because I think we don't speak about this enough. And
Mm-hmm.
if we don't ask them, then, we won't get this firsthand account of what happened and how it really was.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes when you think about your grandparents and they are like these ancient people, I don't know about your grandparents, but my grandparents were pretty old, at least on my dad's side.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's easy to forget like what they went through. Like they were once young.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
they once left home and had this whole adventure and this whole journey. In my case, on my father's side, it was my grandparents who migrated from China to Malaysia.
Mhm.
So it's not that long ago. All this happened
Yeah.
in a few lifetimes, which is like, I don't know, 100 years ago.
Mhm.
Being migrants ourselves now, I think it would be interesting and valuable to reflect on our grandparents or our ancestors' journey.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
let's start with, why did our ancestors leave
Mhm.
China?
Yes.
So the Chinese diaspora from southern China to the Southeast Asian countries like Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia mostly happened in the mid 1800s to about the 1940s. And this was a period of massive instability within China.
Mhm.
The question comes up like, why was it the southern Chinese people who left? Right? China is so big, and all these unrest and these rebellions and stuff were actually happening all around China. So why was it only the southerners who left? That was the first thing I thought. Because in Malaysia, we're like Guangdong ren, Guangxi ren, Fujian ren, they're all the southern provinces, right?
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
Wasn't it because the British people had more activities in the south? So I think one of the southern ports was the first port that was open to the world, and China was before that closed to the outside world. And so the port was open. That's where the English started their conquest.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I can remember, there's also an opium war happening in the south in particular that was really bad.
Mm-hmm. So there were 2 opium wars during this period. And through the 2 opium wars in the mid-19th century, Britain and France forced the Qing government of China at that time to authorize the opening of certain ports.
Yeah.
In 1842, for example, Great Britain and China signed the Treaty of Nanking, Nanjing Heyue, I guess,
Yeah.
which ceded the island of Hong Kong to Britain. And at the same time, they also opened 5 ports to British trade and residents, including Xiamen and Fuzhou, or Amoy and Fuchao.
Okay.
So these ports were in the south of China,
Yes.
like you pointed out.
Mm-hmm.
And also traditionally, people in the south were more accustomed to traveling overseas. So this wave of migrants leaving China were not really the first waves of people. There were always merchants and craftsmen, even before the 19th century, who were leaving China through these ports. and settling in like Malacca or
Yeah.
Batavia. So these people were already more familiar or had some sort of family ties to people living in Southeast Asia. So that also made them more likely to...
Receptive to the idea.
Yeah, exactly. Other than the Opium Wars, there were also other push factors. For example, the Hakka Punti clan wars. This happened in like the early 1850s.
Okay.
Punti in Hakka actually means local,
Okay.
and Hakka actually means guests, people.
Yes.
So there was like intense population growth in the Canton province, and the Cantonese people who were the locals of Canton province were resentful of the Hakka people who were kind of like infringing on their lands, and
I see.
basically when resource is scarce,
Yes.
they start fighting. And this actually caused a lot of interracial strife and conflict. It actually resulted in close to 1 million deaths.
Wow.
So not only was there the colonial influence, it was also interracial tension, you know, incentivize people to leave for better future. So then the other question is, so why did they go to like Southeast Asia? We have this notion, at least I had this notion, that a lot of Chinese people went to the US, for example, like California, Jiujingshan, the old gold mountain.
Yeah.
And actually some of them also went to Victoria in Australia for also gold mining. So yeah, why do you think they went to Southeast Asia?
Because the British also colonized Malaya at that point, and they needed a lot of manpower over there with their tin mining, rubber tapping, and that's why they were importing people from China and India, right?
Correct. Very good student of history. Yes, you're right. In Southeast Asia is where Britain and France and the Dutch have a lot of their colonies, right?
Yeah.
And it's a boom time for them exporting rubber, tin, like you mentioned. So yes, these Chinese people actually, not all of them left voluntarily. Some of them were coerced.
Yes.
Some of them were actually outright just kidnapped
Oh, wow.
to become laborers. And they are called coolies.
Yes.
We all know this term. A fun fact of the word coolie, it actually seems to have originated from the Hindustani word coolie, which means a slave.
Yeah.
But somehow it matches with the Chinese word coolie, which is like bitter labor.
Yeah. Difficult work.
Yeah. So yeah, that basically sums up what they were taken to do in Southeast Asia. It was to do hard labor. So how were these coolies brought to Southeast Asia?
Boats.
Yes, correct. They were brought by boats. Earlier time it was sailboats. Later in the 1900s, then they traveled by steamboats. Steamships.
Yeah.
Not like 火锅. These boats would carry like hundreds of laborers, and these laborers, they didn't have money. That's the whole point of them leaving, right? So how did they pay for the trip there?
I remember that there is like a main person who gathers people to go abroad, and he's like kind of the captain. And then he would pay for the cost of them traveling. And so these people who leave are indebted to this person. And until they pay their debt, they're basically not paid a salary for an extended period of time. So there's like a hierarchy of slavery, so to say. Like, you know, you have the British to the Chinese, and then the Chinese captains to the even lower ranking Chinese people. That's what I remember.
Yes, exactly. So these boats were actually operated by colonizers, like British captains. But these boats will typically have agents, and these agents would recruit workers. Some voluntary, some involuntary. And these workers would have to sign indentures or contracts, which they would repay with 1 or 2 years worth of their wages. So it's like they get an advance
Yeah.
to get on the boat, and they had to pay it back by 1 or 2 years of labor after arrival, and they were charged interest
Crazy.
according to the period
Wow.
of repayment.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so these coolie were also so helpless in a sense that there's also another term used to refer to them called 住宅. So basically the agents will go and try to 卖住宅, find like victims and sell it off to the Brits to become laborers. Yeah. And then after they got on the ship, they had to endure weeks of the journey down to a port. For our ancestors, is most likely Singapore. And then from there, they make their way to other 8 regions in Malaysia. So the main ports were Singapore and Penang at that time.
Okay.
These voyages were quite dangerous in the sense that there were no doctors on board, and with poor hygiene and sickness, and if one person gets sick, the whole ship might get infected.
Yeah.
So you might not even make it to the other side.
Did they transport both men and women on these boats?
So from what I understand, it's mostly men.
Yeah.
Later on, there were also women, but the initial wave, I believe, were mostly men because they were required to do hard labor.
Yep. Was there a way where people who arrived in this unknown land were taken care of?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, my dad always brought me to Klang for bak kut teh. And there was one bak kut teh that we went to very regularly, still running today. And it's set in the Fujian Hui Guan, or like an association. So this association is specific to the people who come from Fujian. And these 会馆 or associations, they were formed during this mass influx of Chinese migrants into Malaya. And their whole purpose was to be like a support system for newcomers to the new land. And they were normally differentiated by the place of origin. For example, the Fujian Hui Guan would support people coming from Fujian, China. And there were also other clans that were based on family, for example. So my family name is Ma, and there is a still active 马氏公会, and I'm pretty sure there's a 陈氏公会, where all the Tan family
together
clan people can go and get help.
Yeah. This made me think of the modern day variation of 公会, 会馆, and that is WeChat.
Oh, yes.
And I found this out only recently that in basically every city and every event, like any big event happening, like a scientific conference, for example, where I've seen it in my own eyes, Chinese people organize themselves such that there is a group particular to a place or an event. And so the moment they arrive to that new place, they already have a network of people that they can make friends with.
Right.
And therefore they just land running and start their lives with a network of people and not have to do everything by themselves. In a way, I find that really nice because you're supported wherever you go. The downside is just that then you're so comfortable that you never really get out of your bubble and never really get to experience what life is like outside of this bubble.
There's like a fine balance between the two, I guess. Yeah, I need to find the Stockholm WhatsApp group. I think I joined a Sweden Facebook group.
For Malaysians or for Chinese?
For Malaysians, yeah. Yeah, I think like that's like the added complexity for us because I don't know, we don't really identify fully with Chinese people, and we don't fully identify with general Malaysian people also. So it's like, I guess I would say I identify more with Malaysians for sure than Chinese people from mainland China. But yeah, it really depends if it's like some groups, I imagine maybe they would like go to the mosque together, for example. Yeah, then that's not really my type of circle also, right? Yeah, so it's a little bit more complex for us, I think, than than
Yeah, it's a
Chinese.
subset of the population.
Yeah.
And also, we are not so well organized. I think the Chinese people are just really well organized in that regard.
Yes. It's like kind of a proof like how well organized they are, that they survived all this time. And these 会馆 are still running today. They teach young
Yeah.
people how to speak the dialects. They sometimes have like scholarships to help fund like students' education for those who need it. They also have events during festivities. I think my parents have attended a couple recently that were hosted by the 潮州会馆, and they did some traditional dances that was actually featured in the movie Dear You, I think. And
oh, wow. Okay.
yeah, one would even say that certain cultural like heritage are better preserved outside of China because we skipped the communist era where there was like the cultural revolution and everyone was supposed to wipe out their past and just be modern new people. But that didn't happen to our ancestors, right? So certain practices and memories, I think, are actually more well preserved in countries like Malaysia and Singapore, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so after you've arrived and then you start working and then you earn some money, of course you pay back your debt. But then the whole point of you leaving was to earn money so you can send back home, right? That time they didn't have Wise. So how did you send money?
So I would assume that I would hand money to someone I trust who's going back to China, and they would pass it on to the right people. However, I don't know who I would trust, if not a family member, or if it's organized. Yeah.
Very good intuition on all these things. So yes, it started off with something called 侨批. 侨 is 华侨的侨 and 批 is 批准批发 批商的批.
Yeah.
These are basically letters containing money. So it would contain like a written letter of like how you're doing, and you might ask your family how they are doing, and just like there will be some money enclosed.
Yes.
This letter will be entrusted to a trusted individual who, in the name of honor, will deliver it safely and rightly to the recipient.
Yes.
And these guys were called 水客. It could sometimes be someone who does it, I guess, as a full-time job, traveling back and forth.
Yeah.
And they would get a cut of the money that you send back as their commission. And there were also times where you would just pass it to a relative who happens to be traveling home.
Yeah.
But later on, this 侨批, it's also called 银信, will more standardized.
Okay.
There was something called a 侨批局, the Chinese remittance shop, or also known as a 批局. It began in Malacca, apparently, established quite early, actually, 1757,
Oh, okay.
by a guy called Chen Liu. I suppose like the concept of a central body helping you remit money back home existed for a long time.
Yeah.
But it was unregulated and it probably was very difficult to scale.
Okay.
Later on in the 1920s to 30s, the banks kind of started to take over. Then people started to stop using 水客 and 侨批 and just use the bank to remit money.
Okay.
And these 侨批, because they were not only money, they were letters, handwritten letters. Sometimes these laborers were illiterate, so they would have either the 侨批局 or a friend write the letter on their behalf and send back to their families. And these became important historical records of life during that time. So yeah, Misha, I hope you keep your journal.
I wouldn't want anybody to read that. So.
Hopefully by the time someone reads it, you'll be dead and gone. So
I don't want anybody analyzing my life. I shall start writing formal letters to you.
Oh, wouldn't that be cool?
Actually, yes. You know, as a kid, I always wanted to receive letters. But then now when I see a letter in a post box, I think, oh no, it's another bill. And so It would be so nice to every now and then receive a kind letter, something that is not just another bill.
Right.
Was there a point in time where like people stopped migrating to Southeast Asia?
Yeah, I mean, I think now we're seeing like a boom again of Chinese
Yes, that's
people
true.
moving to
Mm-hmm.
Malaysia. Yeah, but what we
Mm-hmm.
were talking about just now was during the Qing government's rule of China, right? And they were pressured by colonial forces to open their ports and stuff like that. But after the CCP took over, the Chinese Communist Party won the war against Kuomintang and the People Republic of China was established.
Yeah.
Then there was a big shift in terms of the ruling government's attitude towards migrants or immigrants specifically. First of all, they were
Mm-hmm.
very suspicious about migrants because at that time there was a lot of like political intrigue where some people will associate the Japanese, the Koreans, the Westerners. So basically they were very skeptical about international affairs and they tried to close their borders as much as possible.
Yeah, now I remember that.
And I think another reason was that Southeast Asian countries like Malaysia became independent, and then the colonies no longer demanded that much labor. Their industry was shifting, and yeah, the changing political and economic landscape just made it less viable for people to emigrate from China.
Yeah.
I think we can close with one final fun fact.
Yes.
Do you remember who is Hong Xiuquan? Rings a bell?
No, I do not.
You know Taiping Tianguo?
Yes.
Taiping Rebellion.
Ring some bells.
Ring some bells.
Yes.
So there was this Taiping Rebellion happening in that turbulent period in China in the 1800s. This is also one source of the suffering and death in China. And the leader of this conflict was called Hong Xiuquan, and he's the leader of a group called Taiping Tianguo, literally the peaceful heavenly kingdom.
Yes.
And so he's actually a Christian. Christians denounce him, they don't claim him, but he says he's a Christian. And he was rebelling against the Qing government at that time. The reason why he became this very confused Christian was because he had failed the government exam 4 times. So 他考状元考不到 for 4 times. And then he had a mental breakdown. And then he dreamt that he visited heaven and he discovered that he is the brother of Jesus Christ.
Why the brother though? Why not Jesus Christ himself?
So God was his father and he was one of the holy sons of God. His elder brother was Jesus Christ, and he's directed to rid the world of demons, including the corrupt Qing government and Confucian teachings. The moral of the story is don't study too hard until you get mental breakdown. So that was our very simplified overview of the Chinese migration to Southeast Asia in the 18 and 1900s. We hope you've learned something new and even feel inspired to talk to grandpa or grandma about their journeys. Tell us what you think in the comments or on our IG page at Paper Mache People. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. See you next time.